Hello everyone and welcome to DutchGreyBeard. As you can see, I'm trying out a new background for this video. This is not a green screen. Look, these are real books. Perhaps I'll return very quickly to my own seat at the computer. I just don't know. As you can see, I don't have professional lighting. I'm depending on nature's light here, and the sun is coming and going at this moment. My last wrap-up covered 72 days of reading, from September 1 to November 11th. This wrap-up will cover less days, namely 46. During November 12 till December 27, I read 7 books, with a total page count of 3,430. On November 12, I signed on for a 16-book series. You can probably guess which one that is. Indeed, The Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb, finally. Thankfully, this huge series is divided into several trilogies and one quadrilogy. So the in-between breaks can be longer than with a series like The Wheel of Time, where every new book follows the events right where they ended the previous book. My introduction to the Queen of Fantasy, Robin Hobb, was very successful. Assassin's Apprentice, the first installment in the Farseer trilogy, with 435 pages, was just great. I won't elaborate very much here because I did a separate video on this book. I finished reading this book on November 19 and I rated it 92 points out of 100. Being inspired by several booktubers who listen to audiobooks, I thought I'd give that a try. I always read books in the physical form. This was my first experience listening to a book, and for that I chose my old-time favorite Duncton Wood by William Horwood. I figured that it would be easier to get used to this format by doing a reread. This book is 621 pages long and the narration takes up almost 24 hours. Listening to it during my walks and doing the dishes or making my meals took me more than a month. It was a great experience to read this book this way. The book was as good as I remembered, and even better. I gave it an exceptionally high score, 98 out of 100. I plan to listen to all 3 of the books in this first Duncton trilogy. By the way, the book was narrated by Gareth Armstrong. Very, very good. On November 18, I started reading The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis. Even though the book has only 146 pages, I finished it on November 27, so I needed 9 days for it. There is a small story to this read. Because of the increasing mental weight of my immensely huge TBR, I decided to thin out my TBR for literature. At the end of my video, where I summarized this thinning out process, I asked if any of the viewers thought I was making a mistake taking out this book or that book. Nev from Nevs Books recommended that I should restore this small book by the author of the Narnia Chronicles. So I instantly started reading it. Was it a hidden gem that got saved in the nick of time? Or was it a total waste of my time? The easy answer, neither. As with many books by this author, I'm feeling very mixed about it. At moments, I was absolutely blown away by the sheer insight and writing style, while on the next page, I have no idea what he's talking about. More than once, I got completely lost in his cryptic language. It's a very surrealistic and abstract story about this bus ride to heaven, flipping into absurdity at times. No doubt this has to do with the fact that what we are reading is a dream. In the preface, Lewis calls it a fantasy. On the pages where I did find my bearing, the author writes some amazing stuff. It reminded me of the Divine Comedy by Dante, who also wrote La Vita Nova, The New Life. The narrator makes the reference himself when the protagonist meets George MacDonald. I tried to tell him how a certain frosty afternoon at Leatherhead Station, when I first bought a copy of Fantastes, being then about 16 years old, had been to me what the first sight of Beatrice had been to Dante. Here begins the new life. This passage, by the way, is the reason why I bought some books by George MacDonald. He is one of the very first writers in the genre of fantasy. His first book, Fantastis, I believe was published in 1843. Around halfway, The Great Divorce got more interesting. Because of it being such a mixed bag, I rated it 65 out of 100. Next, I read the autobiography by Geddy Lee. He is the singer and bass player of the Canadian progressive rock band Rush. I am a huge fan of their music, and I've read all the books their drummer Neil Peart wrote. Ghost Rider, a memoir he wrote after his daughter and wife had passed away, holds the number 9 spot in my list of best books of all time. I started reading My Effin Life on November 24 and finished it on November 29. It has 512 pages. I am always reading at least 4 books simultaneously, but this one I could not put down. Every time when I started reading, this was the one I picked up. It's a very easy read, well written with casual interjections such as, "Okay, where was I?" The stories made me laugh out loud, except for one. In chapter 3, Lee relates about the Holocaust history of his parents. Both his mother and father survived the death camps of the Nazis, and this long chapter of almost 40 pages makes a lasting impact. I've read a lot of Holocaust literature by authors such as Imre Kertész, Primo Levi and Jorge Semprún, and every time it touches me deep inside. Other than that, this was a fun read. I gave My Effin Life 89 out of 100. The second volume in the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb, Royal Assassin, was a direct hit again. Started on November 20th and finished it on December 12, 22 days, even though I very enjoyed this book. It is 675 pages in small print. When I finish this trilogy, I'll do a detailed reading experience. It was wonderful to read how Night Eyes, one of the most praised animal companions on BookTube, comes into the story. Fitz buys the mistreated and caged young wolf without knowing what to do with the animal. At first, Fitz calls him Cub. In the beginning, Cub is filled with hate towards humans. But every day that I did not strike him, every bit of food I brought him was one more plank of trust in the bridge between us. It takes Fitz more than 100 pages to finally bond with the animal. At that point, the wolf tells him that his name is Night Eyes. The pacing of the story was very slow, but Hobb is known for that, and it really didn't bother me. This was simply another great book. I gave Assassin's Quest 93 points out of 100. The next book occupied my reading table for 30 days. I started reading it on November 13 and finished it on December 13. Mostly Harmless, the last book in Douglas Adams's trilogy of 5 with 230 pages, was a chore for me to read. It was funny at times. I liked the wink to Robert Heinlein, but there's no such thing as a free launch. The story, if you can even speak of one, is without direction. It got so boring that I caught myself skipping the long, elaborate sentences Adams is so good at writing, thinking, whatever. Occasionally, very occasionally, I saw the brilliance of Adams trying to break through to the surface. But overall, this was a boring read, and I'm glad I made it to the end of these 5 books. It got 43 points out of 100, 2 stars. My final read in these 46 days was Tigana by Gavriel Kay. I started this on December 13 and finished it on December 27. So I had 2 weeks to savor this chunker of 812 pages. I recently released my reading experience video on this book, so if you want to watch my full admiration of this writer and this book, go check that one out. This was an almost perfect read for me. I liked and loved literally everything about it. GGK's writing is phenomenal, and so is his character work and his world building. There is so much realism to his fantasy that it almost feels like you're reading about a real world. Some of the characters go through deep emotional and turbulent experiences, but each and every one responds different. Kay's writing transported me to an existing world with 2 moons, 3 gods, and very realistic people in it. This is the best book I read in 2023, and I cannot wait to dive into more of his works. So, that's my wrap-up of 46 days of reading. Thank you very much for watching this video. Until we meet again at DutchGreyBeard.